Oh, but you learn a lot about life struggles, about who they had to leave behind at home, and how much of a struggle it was to become acculturated here. Oh, just tremendous struggles. And then to constantly being put down, they felt, because they didn't understand the system. I remember one day watching a student who had been in the country only 24 hours. He was in the dormitory, and he was trying to get a glass of water. It's a simple thing, you know, and he takes a glass and he sees this machine, and he's thinking, how does this work? You know, and there are no signs that tell you how to do it. And he's fumbling around, you know, and this is a student who was probably best in his class, in his university at home, and he's feeling so inadequate. Your heart really goes out to people like that. And then you realize what it's like when you go abroad and you know the feeling, the humbling feeling of just suddenly being out of it when you've been at the top before. It's a very humanizing experience. In the ESL class, you get a group, a community, because they have a common need. And that group experience is so rich. It's that you learn a lot about life. That's the main thing you learned. I also taught undergraduate Americans a little bit at Stanford in how to teach English as a second language, but I also was a freshman advisor. And as a freshman advisor, I saw undergraduate students, you know, growing up. And yeah, I saw some troubled students. I saw a woman who, I'm not sure she ever graduated. She had come from a little tiny fishing community in Alaska, and adjusting to the high pressure atmosphere of Stanford. It's kind of a pressure cooker environment. She just had a real difficulty with that. And she went into art as a way to express herself. Her art was good. But I didn't ever hear whether she graduated or not. I'm not sure. It was just a real struggle. I had a basketball player who was on the first string. I met Mike Montgomery, the coach, who later coached the Warriors, because we were talking about him and his struggles. He graduated. I don't think he probably went on in basketball. He wasn't quite that good enough, and he didn't have the drive. He just, the coach said, oh, it sounds like his behavior on the court is the same as his behavior in the classroom. Sort of just gets by. And you can't do that as a basketball player. Who else was troubled? Oh, I had students who were, major identity crises culturally. I had one Latino who had grown up in LA, and he was very much into his Hispanic group as a teenager. And I remember he said, when I was an undergraduate, I went into Hispanic studies because it was safe. And he stayed with his group. And one instructor kind of tapped him on the shoulder and said, you're going on, you're doing more. And he was afraid. And by the time I met him, he was a third-year student in medical school. He broke down crying in my office. He just came to me for advice. And he broke down crying because he didn't know which language to use. He could speak, Hispanic street gang language. He could speak Hispanic going to school language. He could speak English in the classroom. And now he was becoming a doctor, and he thought, that's going to be a professional language that I'm not very comfortable with. And he really felt he didn't know which one to use. And I said, you can use all four of them. You know, just use them appropriately. But he had so much emotion. He'd worried so much about that for years that I imagine he did fine. But he needed to talk about it with somebody. You know. Oh, so many students. It's hard to recall all the special ones right now. Most of them were so good, so positive, so going places. That's a huge question. Wisdom. I don't feel like I should pontificate, but I'd say look beyond today, not pinning down what you want to do, but just seeing what's out there. I remember when I was in high school and early college, I kept thinking, my goal is to become aware. I kept coming back to that same word and say, I guess that's what it is I'm trying to do, to become aware. Because there was so much I wasn't aware of coming from the background I did. So how do you become aware? You become aware by reading, number one, by talking to people, number two, by reaching out into groups that you haven't even thought of before, by broadening yourself, really broadening your interests. We used to say at Stanford, as freshman advisors, we used to say, before you choose your major, we want you to broaden your interests. If you think you know your major when you're coming in, don't necessarily think that you should follow that major. We said before you declare your major, we want you to think of at least 3 areas in which you could major and inform yourself as much as you can about those areas. And then your second year, get it down to 2. And then maybe between those 2, one will be your major and one will be your minor. But don't narrow yourself and don't settle for something. There's a very, very bright student in this high school who says, I think I'm going to be an accountant. I was quite surprised. And I said, an accountant? Why is it that you think you'd like to be an accountant? And she said, because I think I want to own my own business. And I said, oh, what kind of business? She said, oh, I don't know, but I thought I would need accounting. I said, well, it's good to have those skills, you know, but I want to tell her, you can do a whole lot more than accounting, which is just a skill. You have incredible communication skills. And I'd advise her to go out and learn a lot and use those communication skills. If she wants to do her own business, which I hope she'll do, she can pick up accounting along the way. But there are an awful lot of rewarding careers that involve communication skills. And I would recommend that she do those. But then I'm not strong in math and accounting. Some people would find accounting a fine major. So don't specialize, don't settle, broaden yourself is my advice.
Hi, I'm Rachel Weathers.
I'm Sarah Reagan.
And I'm Ashley Evans.